The Valoran's mistake. The Valoran Dominion had conquered 97 worlds before they set their eyes on Earth. Each campaign had been the same: overwhelming force, calculated brutality, and surrender within days. Their fleets were unstoppable. Their warriors were bred for war. Their technology had been refined over 10,000 years of galactic dominance. They were emperors of the void, and they knew it. Humanity was different, they were told. A young species, fractured, primitive. They had only just discovered faster-than-light travel a century ago. Their ships were cobbled together from stolen designs and jury-rigged engines. Their diplomats spoke with nervous voices at the Galactic Council, always apologizing, always asking for time. The Valoran High Command saw them as children playing at statehood. Annoying, yes, but ultimately insignificant. So when humanity refused to cede the resource-rich moons of the Outer Reach, the Valoran responded the only way they knew how. They declared war, not with negotiation, not with ultimatums. Just war, swift, brutal, final. The invasion fleet arrived at Earth's doorstep 3 weeks later. 500 warships, each the size of a small city. The message they broadcast was simple: surrender your holdings, acknowledge Valoran supremacy, or be erased. They expected panic. They expected begging. They expected Earth's satellites to go dark as the government scrambled to capitulate. Instead, they got laughter. Admiral Elias Rourke stood in the war room beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic star maps and the faces of a dozen generals. He was 53 years old, gray at the temples, calm in a way that made people nervous. When the Valoran ultimatum finished playing, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. Not with joy, with recognition. "They think we're going to fold," he said quietly. "They think this is like all the others." One of the younger officers spoke up, voice tight with fear. "Admiral, their fleet is 5 times the size of ours. Their shields are impenetrable. Our weapons barely scratch their hulls. What are we supposed to do?" Rourke looked at him for a long moment. Then he stood, walking to the star map, tracing the Valoran formation with one finger. "We do what humanity has always done," he said. "We adapt. We improvise. We make them regret underestimating us." He turned to face the room. "They fought 100 wars, won 100 victories. But they've never fought us. They don't know what we're capable of. They don't know our history. They think strength is measured in tonnage and firepower." His voice dropped, cold and certain. "They're wrong. The first battle took place above Mars. The Valoran fleet moved with textbook precision, surrounding the human defense platforms, preparing to obliterate them with a single coordinated barrage. It should have been over in minutes. Instead, the human platforms detonated, not from enemy fire, from their own crews. A deliberate self-destruct synchronized across 50 installations. The explosions tore through the Valoran formation like shrapnel, disabling shields, blinding sensors, scattering the fleet into chaos. In that moment of confusion, humanity's ships, small, fast, built for guerrilla tactics, swarmed in from the asteroid belt. They didn't try to fight fair. They rammed damaged ships. They fired into engine cores at point-blank range. They used tractor beams to fling debris into the path of retreating vessels. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't honorable. But when the smoke cleared, the Valoran had lost 40 ships and humanity had lost none. The Valoran commanders were stunned. Not by the losses, they could replace 40 ships, but by the method: sacrificing your own installations, ramming tactics, fighting like savages. It was unthinkable. It was barbaric. It was effective. Back on the Valoran flagship, Supreme Commander Thalaxis reviewed the battle footage in silence. His subordinates waited, nervous. Finally, he spoke. "Send a second wave. Triple the escort. Destroy their shipyards. No more games." But across the galaxy, in 100 human colonies, something was already changing. The news of the Mars battle spread like wildfire. Humanity hadn't won, not yet, but they had drawn blood. They had proven something the Valoran didn't want to believe. They could be hurt. And Admiral Rourke, watching the same footage from Earth, allowed himself a grim smile. "Now they're angry," he said. "Good. Angry enemies make mistakes." His second-in-command, Commander Yuki Tanaka, stepped beside him. "They'll come harder next time. We can't keep sacrificing infrastructure." "We won't have to," Rourke replied. He pulled up a new file on the hologram. Schematics for something the Valoran had never seen before. "We're going to teach them a lesson in human creativity. One they'll never forget. The Valoran Dominion had made their first mistake when they declared war on humanity. Their second mistake was thinking humanity would fight like they did. But the greatest mistake? The one that would unravel their empire and reshape the galaxy, that was still to come. The unraveling, the second wave arrived faster than expected. The Valoran were done with patience. 3 months after the Battle of Mars, a fleet of over 1,000 warships emerged from hyperspace around Luna, Earth's moon. This time they brought planetary siege weapons, devices capable of cracking continents, boiling oceans, turning worlds into graveyards. The message was clear: no more games. No more mercy. Surrender or die. Humanity didn't surrender, but they didn't fight either. Not directly. The Valoran fleet held position, scanning for defensive grids, for hidden weapons platforms, for anything that might resist. They found nothing. Earth's orbital defenses had been dismantled. The shipyards around Luna were dark, abandoned. Even the military satellites were offline. It was as if humanity had simply given up. Supreme Commander Thalaxis reviewed the data with suspicion. "Where are they?" His sensor chief hesitated. "Sir, we're picking up scattered signals deeper in the system. Jupiter's moons, the asteroid belt, but nothing coordinated. It looks like evacuation." Thalaxis narrowed his eyes. Something was wrong. The humans had fought at Mars with desperation and cunning. They wouldn't just abandon their homeworld, but the scans showed no traps, no ambushes. "Just silence, advance," he ordered. "Secure Earth orbit, deploy ground forces. If they're hiding, we'll dig them out." The Valoran fleet moved forward, confident, unstoppable. And then, halfway between Luna and Earth, the first ship vanished. Not destroyed, not disabled, just gone. One moment it was transmitting normal telemetry, the next it disappeared from every scanner, every visual feed, every sensor network, as if it had been plucked from existence. Panic rippled through the fleet. Thalaxis demanded answers. His officers scrambled, but before they could respond, 3 more ships vanished. Then 7, then 20. The fleet began to scatter. Captains breaking formation, trying to retreat, but retreat to where? Hyperspace lanes were jammed. Navigation systems were showing impossible readings. Space itself seemed to be warping around them. In the war room beneath Geneva, Admiral Rourke watched the chaos unfold with cold satisfaction. "How many?" Commander Tanaka checked her readouts. 43 ships captured so far. The quantum snare is holding. They can't figure out what's happening. Rourke nodded. The quantum snare. Humanity's answer to the Valorans' overwhelming numbers. It wasn't a weapon, not in the traditional sense. It was a network of microsatellites, each one generating localized gravity wells and false sensor echoes. Ships caught in the snare thought they were still in normal space, but they were actually trapped in a pocket dimension, frozen in time, harmless, invisible, unreachable. "They'll adapt," Tanaka warned. "Once they figure out the mechanism." "They won't," Rourke interrupted. "Because we're not giving them time." He turned to the communications officer. "Signal the colonies. Phase 2 begins now." Across the solar system, humanity struck. Not with fleets, not with armies, with chaos. Automated drones, disguised as debris, drifted into the Valoran formation and detonated at random intervals. Hacked navigation buoys fed false coordinates, sending ships crashing into each other or into planetary bodies. Human fighters, piloted by volunteers with nothing to lose, performed kamikaze runs against capital ships, targeting life support and command centers. Every tactic was unconventional. Every move was unpredictable, and most terrifying of all, humanity used the Valorans' own technology against them. Captured ships were reprogrammed, their IFF signals spoofed and sent back into Valoran formations. The result was friendly fire on a massive scale. The Valoran fleet, trained for order and discipline, found itself drowning in paranoia and confusion. Thalaxis watched his armada dissolve into disorder and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. Not fear of defeat. He still had superior numbers, superior firepower, but fear of the unknown. These humans didn't fight like any species he'd encountered. They had no honor, no code, no predictability. They fought like cornered animals, vicious, desperate, and endlessly inventive. He sent an emergency transmission to the Valoran High Council, requesting reinforcements and strategic reassessment. "The enemy is employing unorthodox tactics. We need time to..." The transmission cut off. Not from jamming. From something worse. His flagship's AI had been compromised. Screens flickered, showing human text. You wanted war. This is what war with humanity looks like. Before Thalaxis could react, his ship's weapon systems activated on their own, targeting the vessels around him. He screamed orders to shut it down, but the virus was already spreading through the fleet's network. Ship after ship turned on its allies or went dark, or self-destructed. The Valoran formation, once a symbol of galactic dominance, collapsed into a graveyard of metal and fire. Admiral Rourke stood before the holographic display, watching the Valoran retreat in disarray. Around him, his officers cheered, exhausted but victorious. But Rourke didn't smile. He knew this wasn't over. The Valoran had lost a battle, maybe even a fleet, but they still controlled half the galaxy. They still had 1,000 worlds under their banner. This war was just beginning. Commander Tanaka, he said quietly, prepare the next phase. If they want to see what humanity is truly capable of, we'll show them, but not here. Not in our space. Tanaka's eyes widened. Sir, you mean? Yes, Rourke said, his voice like iron. We're taking the war to them. The Reckoning, the Valoran High Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. Around the central chamber, holographic projections of the galaxy's most powerful leaders flickered in silence. They had received Supreme Commander Thalaxis's final transmission before his fleet went dark. They had seen the casualty reports. They had watched in disbelief as humanity, this upstart species barely a century into the stars, dismantled one of the Dominion's finest armadas. The High Arbiter, oldest and most revered of the Council, spoke first. This is unprecedented. A species of their size and youth should not possess such audacity. Another voice, sharp and cold, cut through the chamber. Audacity is irrelevant. They have humiliated us. They have destroyed our fleet. If we do not respond with overwhelming force, every subjugated world will see this as weakness. The Dominion will unravel. The High Arbiter nodded slowly. Then we will respond. Not with a fleet. With an armada. We will mobilize every available warship. We will bring to bear the full might of 10,000 years of conquest. We will reduce their worlds to ash and their species to memory. The vote was unanimous. The Valoran Dominion, for the first time in its history, prepared for total war against a single species. But while the Valoran gathered their strength, humanity moved. Admiral Rourke stood on the bridge of the Defiant Hope, humanity's first deep strike carrier, built in secret over the past decade. It wasn't the largest ship humanity had ever built, but it was the fastest, the stealthiest, and the most dangerous. Around it, a fleet of 300 vessels, everything humanity could spare, prepared for the most audacious military operation in human history. They weren't going to defend Earth. They were going to strike at the heart of the Valoran Dominion itself. Commander Tanaka approached, her face grim. Admiral, the simulation teams are projecting a 70% casualty rate for this mission. If we fail, we won't fail, Rourke interrupted, his eyes fixed on the star map. Because failure means extinction, and humanity doesn't go extinct. Not today, not ever. He turned to address the assembled fleet commanders via hologram. Faces from every nation, every colony, every corner of human space looked back at him, old and young, military and civilian volunteers. They knew what they were about to do. They knew most of them wouldn't come back. For 200,000 years, Rourke began, humanity has survived. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived wars among ourselves. We survived because we refused to give up, no matter the odds. The Valoran think they know us. They think we're weak, chaotic, primitive. They're right about one thing. We are chaotic. But that chaos, that's our strength. We don't fight the way they expect. We don't follow their rules. And we sure as hell don't surrender. He paused, letting his words sink in. Today we're going to teach the galaxy a lesson. We're going to show them what happens when you declare war on humanity. We're going to show them that we don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure no one ever underestimates us again. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, not toward Earth, toward Valora Prime, the Dominion's capital world. When they emerged, the Valoran were utterly unprepared. Their home system, protected for millennia, had never seen enemy ships. Defensive platforms were skeletal, designed for show, not battle. The bulk of their military was light years away, mobilizing for the assault on Earth. Humanity didn't hesitate. They struck with surgical precision. targeting communication hubs, orbital shipyards, government centers. But Rourke had given one critical order: no civilian casualties, no planetary bombardment. They weren't here to destroy a people. They were here to send a message. The Valoran defenders scrambled, but they were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and utterly shocked. Human ships moved like ghosts, appearing and vanishing, hitting hard and fast. Within 6 hours, Valora Prime's orbital infrastructure was crippled. The planet itself was unharmed, but its grip on the galaxy was broken. Admiral Rourke broadcast a message across every Valoran channel. His face, calm and unyielding, appeared on screens across the Dominion. "This is Admiral Elias Rourke of the Human Defense Fleet. You declared war on us because you thought we were weak. You thought we would bow. You were wrong. We have struck at your heart not to destroy you, but to show you what we are capable of. We could have glassed your world. We could have done to you what you planned to do to us, but we didn't. Because unlike you, we understand that strength is not just the ability to destroy. It's the wisdom to know when not to." He leaned forward, his voice hardening. "This war ends now. Withdraw your forces, acknowledge humanity's sovereignty, or we will show you what happens when we stop holding back." The transmission ended. Across the Valoran Dominion, silence fell. For the first time in their history, the conquerors had been conquered. Not with overwhelming force, but with precision, intelligence, and an iron will. The High Council reconvened. The debate lasted hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The vote to withdraw was narrow, bitter, but unanimous. 3 weeks later, the Valoran Armada returned home without firing a shot. The war was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven that power was not measured in the size of your fleet or the age of your empire. It was measured in the will to survive, the courage to fight impossible odds, and the creativity to turn every disadvantage into a weapon. Other species watched and learned. The Valoran Dominion, once unstoppable, began to fracture as subjugated worlds demanded independence. The balance of galactic power shifted, and at the center of it all stood humanity. No longer the naive newcomers, but a force no one would underestimate again. Admiral Rourke stood on Earth, looking up at the stars, and allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. They had won, not because they were stronger, but because they were human, and humanity, when pushed, would always find a way.